The nervous system can actually be broken down into two parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So there's not much there's a lot to it, but there's only two main parts to the central nervous system if we're thinking about the central nervous system. The central nervous system is basically composed of the brain and the spinal cord. And all the rest of these neurons, so you've got nerve cells all over your body, all over your skin, and all inside your body. And all of these other neurons, or these nerve cells, these are all part of the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is all the rest of them, all over your body. And you've got thousands and thousands of neurons all over your body. But the brain, the central nervous system only has two parts, the brain and the spinal cord. But the brain, it's really, really, really important. So I'll have a close look at the brain over here and just some of the parts of the brain. So this is the brain. It's got the biggest part here, this kind of wrinkled structure here. This is called the cerebrum. And that's a vital part of the human brain. But it's also the thinking part of the brain. And the outside of that, so the outer layer of the cerebrum, is actually called the cerebral cortex. So that's kind of the outer layer of the cerebrum. That's responsible for complex thinking. It really makes us human. Another really key part of the brain is over here is called the cerebellum. And this controls coordination and some muscle movement. Cerebellum is a really important part of the brain. So there's another key structure of the brain. And the other key structure of the brain is this structure here, this kind of whitish structure. It ends up leading onto the spinal cord. It's composed of the pons and the medulla oblongata, but this part of the brain is called, if you have the pons and medulla oblongata together, it's called the brain stem. So we've got the cerebrum, that's the big wrinkly part of the brain, the cerebellum, it's also quite wrinkly, and the brain stem. And they're the key parts of the brain. The brain stem controls kind of like the basic functions of your body, like your heart rate and breathing. So if you didn't have your brain stem, you'd stop breathing, your heart would stop beating, and you'd be in very serious trouble. There's some other parts of the brain. I'll quickly rush through some of them. One of those is the pituitary gland here. And this is basically it's an endocrine gland, so it's involved in the release of hormones. And the hypothalamus here, so it's right in the middle of the brain. So this is involved in homeostasis, so it detects changes in temperature and makes sure that our body's kept at the same temperature and really keeps our body stable. And there's also something called the corpus callosum, and this is just a really big cluster of nerve fibers. And the corpus callosum is responsible for the two hemispheres of the brain. So we've got two sides of our brain. The corpus callosum basically keeps those two sides of the brain in contact with each other. So that's the brain. Again, the main parts really is the cerebrum. So that's the part of the brain which enables you to do complex thought. Cerebellum is really for coordination, muscle movement. And the brain stem, pons and medulla oblongata, is core functions like breathing and your heart rate. So that's a bit about, certainly lots about the central nervous system in the brain. But it's also about the differences between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system.